It's a pleasure to introduce you to our EduWorkshop. Thank you so very much for joining us and sharing your well of knowledge and wisdom as well, because tips are all about professional wisdom. And for those that do not know Laurence, Laurence J. Rayon Ibrahim Aibo holds an MA in translation and PhD in translation studies from the Université de Montréal, Canada. She's also a certified English to French translator in Canada and certified healthcare interpreter in the United States. And so she's been translating, teaching, interpreting everywhere in the Americas, Europe, Africa for at least the past 30 years. She started at 5, like me, and she is also the past administrator of the ATA Educator Division and co-author of the Routledge Guide to Teaching, Translation, and Interpreting Online that was published in 2022. I could go on and on and on. She also teaches interpreting and translation courses virtually in online programs at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and New York University. You have in front of you someone that is really diving deep into the research and focusing on pedagogy and ethics. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Laurence to take you through this incredible journey of best practices for translation in school settings in the age of AI.
Thank you very much, Giovanna. Hello, all. It's so nice to see you today. You're brave. It's Saturday. It's a spring, so I'm sure you have a long list of things that you could do today. I'm very excited to present, and also have design activities that I hope will be helpful to you. We all know in this room that this is a very challenging moment for our profession. So we need to be better equipped. We need to be better informed. We need to understand the tools because machine translation is just a tool that we're dealing with. So I hope this short workshop will be helpful. And I hope that other participants will join. So I want to acknowledge we have Leonard, Emilia, Vanessa, Idema, Viviane, and I believe Carla. So thank you for joining us today. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. The learning objectives we'll skip for the sake of time. I will start talking about translation best practices and process. I'll continue with listing a couple of professional and reliable resources we can use as translators. And then this will be a nice segue into these free machine translation tools. And I also call them artificial tools. There's one word that I will not use today is intelligence. I will briefly give you an overview of terms of services of free machine translation tools, the most common ones, terms of service, sorry. And this will help us transition into privacy considerations in school settings and how to make decisions, when to use, these tools or not, and why. And then you will engage in 2 activities in breakout rooms. One will be about identifying personally identifiable information, something that is very important because of FERPA in school settings. And the second activity in the same breakout rooms, you will get to test various machine translation tools, the web-based ones, the most common ones, and comment and decide if this or that type of text you will have 3 short paragraphs is appropriate for these tools or not. As a wrap-up, I will go over common issues and errors that are frequent with machine translation. And then I'll have a little surprise, or maybe a big surprise, free resources that are publicly accessible, created by a researcher in Canada who holds a chair in artificial intelligence and translation. So, and these resources exist in multiple languages, so you can share them with your communities around you. So let us start. Can you see my slides? Can you hear me fine? Yes? All right. Okay, excellent. So let's talk about the translation process. A process because we have steps to follow. We can tweak them, of course. It's not set in stone, but basically we need to read the text. We need to understand it. We need to do research, etc. Translation is a profession. We need to be trained. Translators need to be qualified. Okay. Let me make sure I can see my notes here. Thank you. All right. Um, and so the steps in the translation process, let's quickly review them. I'm sure you already know them, right? So first we need to read the materials needing translation. We need to decide whether we accept or decline based on our qualifications, our availability, the timeline, and if we are a freelancer, based on the rates that are being offered, right? If we decide to accept the assignment or the translation request, then we work on our first draft, we research terminology, we might use existing translation memories and glossaries or create new ones. Then starts the bilingual review stage. We review our first draft. We check for meaning with the source and target text, for omissions, addition, flow, and style. And then when we are satisfied that everything is there and the way we want to present the text, then we do a proofreading. We check for language mechanics and spelling. And we, in certain language combinations, for example, French, English, Spanish, they are professional editing tools to help us with this process. Again, this is also a sort of artificial tool that we might rely on to polish and spell check our writings. So, for example, for English and French, there's one called Antidote that is very popular in Canada. And there are multiple ones for Spanish, for professional editors, writers, and translators. Then the translation is sent to the reviewer, who needs to be trained and qualified for this task. We receive the comments back from the reviewer. We can accept or decline these comments as needed, and then we finalize the translation. And at this stage, if there are a lot of edits, we might go back to the bilingual reviewing stage, checking for meaning, omission, addition, etc., and proofreading, spelling, language mechanics, etc. And then we can send the translation that is finalized, right? So what type of resources, professional resources, do we have, reliable and professional? So today our focus is school settings, so K-12. So for example, if we need to check a definition, we're not familiar with, I don't know, the name of a test or a procedure or an assessment, it's helpful to identify reliable glossaries. So let's take a look at an example here. This organization is a nonprofit organization. Always check about if this company is selling something, is this organization selling something or not. And then I can check, okay, there's a list of terms. Maybe I want to review what accommodations are. I don't know. I want to review the rating system, etc. So this is something that we can we can check that is helpful to understand these source texts. Okay. So I see that there's a question in the chat. Welcome, Richard. I have prepared a summarized version of my slides, and I will share them at the end of the workshop. So not all the slides will be shared, but this one will be, for example, part of the deck that is going to be shared with a participant. And I'm glad you managed to join us today. All right. So another type of information of resource you can use are government or agency websites to have background information and glossary. Let's take a look at the quick example again. And I believe that AAITE is recording this workshop, so you're welcome to watch the replay of the workshop if you missed the beginning, right? So here is a glossary of a US higher education system with some specialized terms. So it's always important to really make sure we understand everything, okay? Then let's move on to dictionaries. We can use monolingual dictionaries. So for example, for Spanish, it could be the dictionary Real Academia Española. We can use bilingual dictionaries. Let's take a look. I'm sure you're familiar with this online dictionary called Word Reference. It is not a specialized dictionary. It's a general one. And it has not the same authority as Real Academia, but it's a bilingual dictionary. So you have different language combination, okay? So if you click on this down arrow here, you can see all the language combinations that are available. Okay, I think they added a couple. I can see that Chinese as Icelandic has been added. So it is a free resource. So and it is a dictionary, meaning that you have different context, you have examples provided, and something that is really nice is that you have forum discussions where translators or users of translators are engaging in a conversation to discuss a specific term or a combination of words. Okay. So in terms of dictionary, you have general dictionaries like Word Reference or Real Academia, but you also have specialized dictionaries. Okay, so I have researched two for you today. There's one in French that I can use. It's publicly accessible. It's called Dictionnaire actuel de l'éducation. It's published in Canada, more specifically in Quebec. So it is specific to the Canadian education system. So I need to be careful that is adapted or adequate to the text I'm translating here in the United States, because the school systems have differences. Okay, so I need to use critical thinking and judgment. Then in terms of Spanish, let's do a little, if you have your cameras on, could you raise your hand if your language combination is English-Spanish or vice versa? Okay, the majority, surprise. All right, okay. So another dictionary focusing on education is this one, Diccionario Fundamental de Educación, published in Puerto Rico. This is just an example, but it's important to identify these resources in both our language combinations. Let's imagine that you have only English and Spanish, or English or Portuguese, or English French. So they are dictionaries focusing on educational settings or schools. All right. Another professional resource is by text. You might be familiar with Lingui. Again, you can raise your hand if you're using Lingui on a regular basis. Could we do a little survey? Raise your hand if you use Lingui. Oh, okay. Excellent. Let's take a look. Um, so by text, let me open one. This one is trained in Europe, so we need to be a little bit careful because it might not be appropriate to what we are translating here in North America. So you can enter, for example, this was a test. I typed school assessment with a quotation mark so that the machine looks for the entire term, school assessment, and not assessment in other settings, right? So here I have all sorts of texts where school assessments appear. And on the right-hand side, I have the same text that has been translated into French. And French is my target language. And here at the very bottom, there is information about the organization. So this is an international, UNESCO is an international organization focusing on education. So I would select this one. This one is a Canadian website, so I might click on that. So you could decide to visit, right? If you click on this hyperlink here, you will be directed to the source of the translation and make educated decisions. I don't think this is a good match for what I'm translating, or or yes, it is a good match. Another by text, this one is a Canadian one, so it's closer to our North American realities, is called Traduit. They started with the English-French language combinations and French-English, but they have added Spanish. So let me make sure the interface is in English. So you could decide, okay, I'm typing accommodation. Accommodation has multiple meanings, and I can select my language combinations. And again, you can click here on the hyperlink to see the entire by text. You have English on one side, and then you would have Spanish on the right-hand side. Okay. And the paragraph where the term that I'm looking appears is highlighted in green here, but you have the entire text. Okay. Sometimes it's called a bytext, sometimes it's called a concordancer. So these are tools that you might want to use. Another strategy or another type of resource we can use when we translate text are to create our own little corpus, if you want. Let's say, okay, I'm going to translate a manual on autism in school settings. So I'm going to create a list of relevant websites published in the United States by organization, a national organization working on autism. And I'm going to do the same research in French-speaking countries. It could be France, it could be Canada. I'm going to go with Canada because the way autism is discussed is more relevant in French-speaking Canada than in France, for example. And I'm going to create this collection of websites in English, United States, and other websites in my target language in French-speaking Canada, for example. All right, so this is just an illustration of the various tools that we professional translators have at our disposal. Okay, and you can do you will have access to these slides, so you can click on the hyperlinks and visit and see if it works for you or not. Now let's move to newer translation tools. I'm slightly behind on the time schedule, but we can have shorter activities in breakout rooms. That works too. I said newer because machine translation has been around since the 1950s, and in fact, the first company to create the first machine translation device or computer was IBM in New York City. Or in the state of New York, I don't remember. I think it was in 1956 during the Cold War between Russia and the United States. So let's just put it out there. Machine translation has been around for a long time. What is absolutely new or newish is the ubiquity, the fact that machine translation is so pervasive and all around us today. So with these new tools around us, we, the translation profession, and also the users. So translation profession means translators and also decision makers, right? Language access managers, people who make decisions about budget allocations, etc. And also the end users, meaning the parents, maybe the students in school settings. We need at different levels. We need education and critical thinking about these tools to understand the caveats and limitations. For us, translators and also decision makers, when to use machine translation or not, and how to use it. So I'm going to ask you a question. You can turn on your microphone if you want to suggest an idea. What is the number one reason for using these free machine translation tools for organizations? What's the number one reason, or maybe two
Very
reasons?
quick, especially for a lot of material.
Yes, extremely quick. Is it expensive to use these tools?
There are free ones. I think like Google has their own free translate.
Yeah, they save time and money. Who doesn't want to save time and money, right? So it's a yes, cost, money cost, yes, absolutely. For end users, for the public, it's to understand content created in a language we do not master. For example, I'm on social media. One of my friends is in Sweden. It's a real it's a real story, and sometimes she has little posts, and I want to understand. She's very witty, and I want to understand what she's talking about. Sometimes a machine translation works, and sometimes I don't think it works because this would be weird. Or I want to understand what somebody on posted on Instagram. It's in Portuguese, and I'm not sure that I understand it correctly. So, but there's no consequence. If I understand or not, I'm not going to act upon what the machine suggested. So it's no big deal. So today, machine translation and all these large language models, artificial translation tools today are everywhere. Machine translated content is ubiquitous. It's free, easy, immediate, and it's embedded in our everyday lives. Okay. Um, and there are many false claims inundating the media. The false claims that goes over and over again is that we've reached human parity, that all these machines are as good as translators and interpreters. They are spread by companies who have something at stake, right? They are creating these tools, and so they have for them, it's of course important to spread these claims that these machines are as good, as accurate as professional translators and interpreters without listing the caveats, right? So certain school districts offer a button to immediately, instantaneously translate their websites, and I'm going to give you an illustration. Sometimes there's a warning, or at least, even if it's not a warning, there's a line translated or powered by Google Translate. Okay. So we could call this overt machine translation. Users understand that Google Translate is quite well known, that it has been translated by a machine. Okay. So let's take a look at this website. Okay, this is the website of a school district in New Jersey around me. And I could use the translate button. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here is a little sentence powered by Google Translate. So I could decide to click on Spanish and then, all right, everything is going to appear in Spanish. All right. Okay. All right. So this is an example of overt machine translation. The button is at least transparent. We know that they are using or they are offering to use Google Translate to translate the content of the publicly accessible website. The problem is that sometimes web pages are automatically translated without this transparency, without informing the users that a machine has translated the content for them. So this is a big problem, the lack of transparency. So because machine translated content has exploded, it also has consequences for us language professionals. And this consequence is language pollution. It is becoming increasingly difficult to find translated texts that have been reviewed by professional translators, right? Many translation contains inaccuracies, sometimes egregious mistakes, and they are upcycled. So this is a pollution, like imagine a river, and downstream you have more and more of these little plastic micro particles of plastic. This is the same thing. The other major consequence that people will slowly start to realize or to understand is a widespread illusion that translation is not a professional activity, that any translation can be done by machines with a huge pressure to translate more in less time for less or no money. And I'm sure you feel the burn also in school settings, more, shorter deadlines, etc. Now, what about quality? We need to state, because it's a reality, there are huge improvements for powerful languages. The number one language combination where these improvements are quite flabbergasting is the English-Spanish, Spanish-English language combination, because of the sheer amount of training data, okay? And the number of English and Spanish speakers in the world. These texts are astonishingly fluid in terms of grammar and spelling. There's no rarely grammar mistakes. There's no spelling mistake. So the text that is being translated is acceptable, plausible. Okay. So it gives us a false sense of security. We switch into autopilot mode. We lower our guard, stop thinking critically, right? On the outside, there's no spelling mistake, there's no grammar mistake. The flow is acceptable, looks plausible. So why should we think that there are maybe larger mistakes or meaning mistakes that are hiding there? Okay. Machine translation tools, are they dictionaries? So let's take a look. I'm going to give you a quick illustrations from borrowed from the professor I talked about at the beginning of my of this webinar, Professor Lynn Bowker, who works in Canada. So let's take a look with a quick Google Translate little experiment. All right. All right. I need an avocado. So an avocado, j'ai besoin d'un avocat. Avocado is avocat in French. However, the French word avocat has two meanings. It means an avocado, but it also means a lawyer. Okay. So, of course, I didn't provide any context. If I said, I need an avocado to make a salad, all right, the machine will have a little bit more context and maybe not suggest the lawyer. Okay. But to go back to our topic of the thread, machine translation tools do not have the knowledge of the world when no context is provided. They do not understand, they calculate. Okay? They process, they do not understand. Processing and understanding are two different things. Okay? Give me data and I will process at lightning speed, but understanding is different. Okay? So if you use a dictionary, for example, the verb poder in Spanish, dictionaries provide a ton of different contexts of use with examples illustrating these contexts of use. And as translators, when we are reviewing a page in a dictionary, could be a written page or a digital one, it doesn't matter. You see all these different examples, situations, and then based on what we see, then we will make a decision. Okay, all right, this is exactly what I need. This fits the context I'm working in or with. So, just as a little summary of what we just discussed, we need for end users. There's a need for awareness. Was this text translated by a machine with the potential risks and limitation? There might be errors, okay? Do I want to paste this consent form in a machine or not? What are the consequences for me? Okay, am I okay in accepting the risks or not? For us translators, for language access department, we need education. We need more education than ever. And for translators working with these machine translation tools, there's a lot of cognitive fatigue coming with it. We don't talk about it yet. It's starting. Mark my words. So we need more cognitive savviness. We need more training to know what to look at for. When to use it, for what purpose, how much do I want to embed it in my everyday practice. I use machine translation. Myself, Laurence, right? For certain types of text, right? For other types of text, sensitive, complicated, complex, confidential, etc., it's a big no-no. Either I cannot for confidentiality reasons or privacy reasons, or it will be a waste of time. Okay. So let's move very quickly to a couple of common free machine translation tools. You already know Google Translate, which is the best known in the Western world. Microsoft Bing is one of the Microsoft apps. It caters for a wide range of languages, and it includes something that is quite interesting. You can have different tones, standard, casual, and formal, which is an advance. Baidu is preferred for Asian languages. Yandex is performant for Eastern European languages because of the training data. And DeepL has a professional paid version, DeepL Pro, which is quite performant, and the free version, you can copy and paste shorter paragraphs. And it's trained and very performant with EU languages. The company is based in Germany. Now, if you use the Microsoft applications, I'm using the 360 version, which is connected to the web. All applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote have a translate button. So let me use my little laser pointer here. So this is this embedded button. So you have a text, you wrote something, you have a source text, let's say in English. You could technically click on the translate button and the entire text will be instantaneously translated into the language of your choosing. Okay. We need to be very careful because we always need to ask ourselves, do I have a right to do this? Okay. What about confidentiality? Now, using machine translation comes with responsibility and accountability. Do you think the text that you paste, copy and paste in Google Translate, Yandex DeepL disappears when you close the window? Well, of course not. It doesn't disappear. What happens with the text that you pasted? So let's review a few examples of terms of service. Okay. So you have a hyperlink if you want to review the entire the full version of terms of service. If you copy anything in Google Translate, then you give Google the right to host, reproduce, distribute, communicate, and use your content, okay, on this system. Modify, create works, etc. So you are giving them the permission to do whatever they want with them, including sharing with it other companies, okay? DeepL terms of service. Um, I I like the way they address confidentiality. They have a little section saying that please note that you may not use the free services for processing content containing confidential or personal data of any kind. Okay, and they help the user said any information related to an identified or identifiable natural person. Okay. So I think the terms of service by DeepL are the more explicit. Yes, Richard.
I was just gonna, it's appearing to me that let's say you had a large body of work you want to translate that might include name or personal information or data. Maybe you leave that out, do
Yes.
the translation, and
Mm-hmm.
then you copy paste it into your document of whatever kind, and then insert the name and the personal data that's
Yes,
important.
absolutely. And actually, Richard, I'm going to address that in a half a second. You are absolutely right. We need to redact the document or to edit it. Yes. So this is another example, very obscure. If you want to take a look at reversal terms of service, good luck without a lawyer to be able to understand what they are exactly saying. I do not have that background, so I'm not sure what they are saying. Um, so, the takeaway of privacy considerations is that the content does not disappear after you close the window. Any sensitive information, student educational or medical information, legal documents, etc. And what Richard was mentioning a few seconds ago, PII, personally identifiable information. But what is this exactly? It's more than you think. It's much more than you think. Any kind of representation or information that permits the identity of an individual to whom the information applies, and by indirect or direct means. Okay. So the first activity you're going to work on will be to, based on a already redacted report, to maybe identify additional PII that might still be floating around in the report. So you will be tasked with identifying these PII that may help identify a student, for example, right? Where a student who has been evaluated um, for special education and a report has been produced. So this is what you're going to work on. So I am going to paste in the chat a link for you to access these definitions, PII, okay? So I'm going to ask you to open it on your device and keep it open. I can reshare it as needed when you are going to work on the activities and the exercises in breakout rooms. Okay, because I'm slightly behind and we started a little bit later, I'm going to move a little bit faster now. So we could use these free machine translation tools for internal uses. It might be used, for example, you receive an email from a family and you want to quickly share the gist of a message with a colleague who doesn't master Spanish, for example. So you could, what Richard said, removing any PII, paste it in one of these free machine translation tools, and share the translation with this colleague who doesn't understand. But we need to be very careful about that. It's very easy to make a mistake. For external use, a free machine translation alone is not recommended. External use refers to anything that is publicly shared by an organization aiming at the people they serve. The intervention of a professional translator is needed to make sure that quality is there. Okay. These tools also come with gender biases. And again, I will go a little bit quickly over that section just for the sake of time management. So you could do a little demo to check for these gender biases. For example, Google received bad publicity in the media a couple years ago because it systematically translated more prestigious or better paid positions into the male gendered form for gendered languages or gender marked languages. So engineers will always be male, doctors will be male, and less prestigious or lower paid position like nurses or aides will be systematically into a female gender mark form, right? So we need to be aware of that, okay? So now, let me introduce the activities in breakout rooms. We will not have time for 40 minutes, so maybe 30 minutes, and Alex is going to create breakout rooms once I have introduced the activities. So I'm going to share two files in the chat. Let me do that now and then introduce these activities. Okay. All right. Thank you for your patience. Can you see a redacted report on my screen or on the shared screen? Okay. So here are the instructions. So what you see below is a partially redacted document that is publicly accessible on the internet. It has already been redacted, but I would like, once you are in the breakout room with your group, to identify what additional PII should be redacted before using a free machine translation tool. So you could designate a person in your group to take notes and report back in the main room. Okay. The second activity in the same breakout rooms will be to test a couple of these machine translation tools, the free ones, Google Translate, Microsoft Bing Translator, or DeepL. And there are 3 short paragraphs to test. So maybe you'll find that the machine fares very well, or one tool fares very well with one type of text, and fails or has more issues, displays more issues with another type of text. So this first one is extracted from an anti-bullying policy. The other one, and you have the source, all the sources are stated at the bottom of the document, is about understanding dyslexia. And the third one is from a Texas public school report. And this is a short paragraph. So you can copy and paste these paragraphs. They're publicly accessible. So we have the right to do so. And yeah, so do test these different machine translation tools, and then as a group, try identifying issues to be addressed or areas needing improvement. If you do not share the same language, try explaining to your partner or partners the types of issue to qualify them. Is it an error in meaning, an inaccurate meaning, a wrong term, a false cognate, an awkward flow, a wrong word order, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And for the sake of time, maybe 30 minutes, Alex. All right. And I will visit your breakout rooms. And I'm going to ask every participant to turn on their camera to engage with their partners, right? All right. I will see you in a few minutes in your respective breakout rooms. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. All right. I'm going to turn off my mic, give them a few minutes, and then I'm going to visit the 3 rooms to provide guidance as needed.
Very well. Thank you so much.
Of course.